Welcome to the Hotelligence Podcast, your strategic vantage point on the changing landscape of hotel safety. Hosted by Jim Kortz, a retired FBI DHS investigator, and Don Carr, a former frontline security owner-operator with years of first-hand incident response experience on hotel properties. Every episode brings you closer to understanding the full picture and what the future may hold. Let's begin.
Thanks for joining us for episode 5 of the Hotelligence Podcast, when safety training meets operational reality. I'm Don. My background includes owning and operating private security agencies, responding to incidents inside hotels at all hours, and seeing firsthand how training plays out when real pressure shows up. And I want to be clear about something up front. This episode isn't about criticism. It's about alignment with reality. Hotels train constantly. Staff care deeply, and brands invest real time and money. And yet, when incidents actually unfold, the outcomes often don't match the intent behind the training.
And I'm Jim, retired federal agent. And Don, you're right. This conversation isn't about whether people care or whether training exists. It's about the environment those efforts are placed into, and whether that environment actually allows training to function the way people expect it to. Good people can be placed into systems where success is structurally unlikely. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
That's right, Jim. Checklists in ambiguous environments. So hotels love checklists. Brands love checklists. Corporate loves checklists. And on paper, that makes sense. Checklists feel objective. They feel safe and they feel scalable. But checklists struggle in environments defined by ambiguity. Training often says, quote unquote, look for signs of trafficking. Okay, but what does that actually mean at 1:30 in the morning with a full lobby, a line at the desk, and one staff member on duty? Multiple visitors, that can be business travel. Avoiding eye contact, that can be anxiety or exhaustion. A young woman with an older man, that could be family travel. Checklists don't remove uncertainty. They surface it without telling staff what to do with it.
And that's where hesitation shows up. Checklists work best when conditions are stable and outcomes are clear, but hotels are neither. When staff are trained to notice indicators that overlap heavily with normal guest behavior, they aren't given clarity. They're given responsibility without resolution. That hesitation isn't confusion, it's rational restraint. So let's talk about training built to scale and not to context. Most hotel training is designed to scale. That means it has to be broad, consistent, and repeatable across thousands of properties. But hospitality work isn't generic. The lived experience of a 19-year-old front desk agent on a solo overnight shift is fundamentally different from that of a daytime general manager. Yet they often receive the same training.
Well said, Jim, because scale is cheaper than specificity. Training that's built to work everywhere rarely fits anywhere particularly well. And generic training doesn't fail loudly. It doesn't produce obvious errors. It fails quietly through second guessing, hesitation, and uncertainty that never makes it into a report. So from the outside, it looks like nothing happened. Inside the moment, everything stalled. So let's talk about the cost of being wrong. This is the part people avoid talking about. Staff are afraid. Not afraid of criminals, afraid of being wrong, afraid of misinterpreting a situation, afraid of complaints, afraid of discipline, afraid of being accused of profiling. Hospitality culture rewards caution, and over time, caution can become silence.
Training that ignores fear cannot succeed in the real world. In law enforcement, fear is acknowledged and trained through repetition and scenario exposure. In hospitality, fear is often unspoken, but it's always present. When training assumes confidence that the environment doesn't support, staff default to the safest option available to them, which is usually doing nothing. So training without repetition. In law enforcement, repetition is constant. Scenarios, refreshers, requalification, that knowledge is reinforced through that repetition.
Indeed, Jim. And in hotels, training is often annual, sometimes less. And research is clear. Without reinforcement, retention collapses. Knowledge without repetition isn't readiness. Hotels train, but training alone isn't preparation. So when it comes to uneven visibility, here's an overlooked reality. The staff who see the most irregular behavior often receive the least targeted training. Housekeeping, maintenance, night audit. They're in rooms. They see patterns over time. But training is front desk focused. Partial coverage creates partial understanding.
And that gap matters. When visibility and training don't overlap, information doesn't disappear because people don't care. It disappears because there's no shared structure for recognizing or holding it. So training versus operational conditions. Training scenarios are clean. Real incidents are not. Training assumes that there's time to think, but real life moves fast. Training assumes management availability, but many night shifts are often one-person operations.
So staff aren't failing training. Training was never designed for the environment staff actually work in. When we judge outcomes without accounting for conditions, we misunderstand what's really happening. So the line training cannot cross, and this is the most important point. Training is not meant to turn hotel staff into investigators. It's not meant to turn them into law enforcement. And it's not meant to force action in ambiguous situations. Hotel staff are expected to document, not diagnose, to preserve information, not resolve it. That boundary isn't a failure. It's a legal and operational necessity. And any system that expects more than that is misdesigned.
When training is asked to carry responsibilities it was never meant to hold, failure is inevitable. Not because people don't try, but because the expectations were never realistic.
Well said, Jim. So how this ambiguity is exploited, those operating with harmful intent understand this system very well. They know training is uneven. They know staff are constrained. They know hesitation is rational. They rely on ambiguity, not because staff don't care, but because the structure demands restraint.
And that's not an indictment of hospitality. It's a description of how the environment actually works.
So when training doesn't produce the outcome people expect, it's rarely about effort.
It's about misalignment between expectation and reality.
That's right, Jim, because training cannot overcome legal boundaries.
And it cannot substitute for structure.
Understanding that doesn't weaken hospitality.
Yeah, correct. It protects it.
So next episode, we'll talk about another invisible friction point, shift change, and why critical information disappears even when everyone is trying to do the right thing.
And I think that conversation matters.
Because responsibility only survives when structure does.
We're all in this together.
And together, we make hospitality stronger. We publish a short, written insider briefing alongside each episode. It goes out on Wednesdays when the episode drops. If that's useful, the link is in the show notes.
Thank you for joining the Hotelligence Podcast, where experience informs smarter, safer hotel operations and prepares you for what comes next. Stay informed, stay confident, and stay connected. As the conversation evolves, Jim Cords and Don Carr will highlight developments that help hotels strengthen their approach to safety and risk management. See you next episode.